MediaTech Ventures Community Spotlight brought to you by Insperity, powerful HR solutions with exceptional follow-through. HR that makes a difference. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Community Spotlight. I'm your host, John Zazzaro, president, co-founder of MediaTech Ventures, here today with the one and only Jason Perez, founder and CEO of Tunes for a Minute. How are you today, good sir?
I'm just fine, good sir. How are you?
I'm just fine, good sir. Well, thank you, my good man. So got a lot to cover in a short amount of time, so I want to hop right into it. We've obviously known each other for a very long time, and I've really enjoyed and watching your journey in evolve, right, beyond kind of music and it Tunes for a Minute. You're with a nonprofit and doing a lot of these crazy things. But I want to go back, right? There's something that always inspires people to go down a certain path, and in music in particular was a big one for you. What was it that inspired you as a kid to pursue percussion in particular?
You know, I think it really was as simple as I wasn't patient enough with my fingers to kind of go down any other road. I started on bass and I just got really bored. I was too fidgety, and I was just always the guy, like, I was always the kid that was like shaking or tapping on things, typical drummer stuff. But yeah, after playing bass for like 3 months, I thought, no, this isn't for me. But yeah, and then I just got into just it was the energy of it all, like the drummer kind of changes the band entirely. And it's all about, as they say, right? It's not what they play, it's how they play. And so it's like that really drew me into like, wow, if I hit it this way, if I'm a little lighter in this part, then everybody feels something different. And that really intrigued me. But
And obviously you've made a lot of music with your brother, Adrian, and Biko. What was it kind of, did you both pick up instruments at the same time, and you had bass and he had guitar, and then you said, screw it, I want to do drums instead? Or was it you both kind of took a liking to the instrument that really spoke to you?
it was, well, a buddy of ours who played bass left his bass at our house. And so we both really took to that very quickly, where it was like, oh, that's all I want to do. I want to go practice again. And then he found out, like, this is cool, but I want a guitar. So he got a guitar shortly after that. And then it was about 6 months before I picked up the drums. But essentially it was, hey, I'm playing this guitar and kind of writing these things and having fun. Like, you should grab something that we can kind of make music together with. And I just, again, bass was I was just not patient enough. And so, cool, let's do drums. And yeah,
You got so angry at the bass, you started hitting things. You're like, I think it should be a drummer instead.
when I had the bass on my lap and I was playing it like this, I thought something's wrong.
You're like, this is how it's done. You're like, no, but maybe you should be a drummer.
Back then, I didn't know. I couldn't.
Yeah, no, nobody ever knew. We still don't. But we pretend to, right? Pretending is like half of it, something like that. So, stylistically, you're all over the place. I think you're one of my favorite drummers to watch. Not only are you extremely entertaining, but I appreciate the different styles that you bring to music that otherwise can sound sometimes extremely mundane, because it's rock or it's indie, right? But
Yeah.
you definitely bring Cuban flavors and a lot of jazz kind of undertones to a lot of music that you play. What drummers really inspired you?
I guess I would say, like, coming up, when I first started playing, it was, oh man, I'm gonna forget his name. Something, I think it's Manuel, or it's whatever. The guy from Incubus. Um, he was, I think, Jose Pasillas. Anyway, he was pivotal in just like how I heard the drums. He was very intentional and just he was good. He was a great rock drummer. And then Thomas Pridgeon with Mars Volta,
Mm.
that I cried like the first time I heard that. It blew my mind. It was like it was just like, oh, music can be made like this. Yes. Um, and then from there, I mean, it's kind of funny because I wouldn't say I'm a drummer's drummer, because I don't, it wasn't later until later in my career that I started listening to just drummers and really diving deep, which in that regard, it would be Steve Gadd any day. Just the way he plays the drums, he sings with them. You don't have to hear much from him to know it's him.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, so I would say after Mars Volta, after Incubus, it would be like Frightened Rabbit and Radiohead. That was like the second wave of like, oh, look at this drumming, and this is so much different, and it's so much more simplistic, and that really took me for a very long time, where I had all this energy and I was like, I want to play the drums, and then I kind of calmed down, but then wanted to sort of embody that low energy, if you would. Um, but yeah, then I mean, I guess in the jazz world, it would be Elvin Jones. Once I started getting into jazz, he was like my guy, and Art Blakey. Those two for me, specifically with jazz, obviously they were kind of the same thing as like a Steve Gadd, just the way they did things and
Hmm.
how intentional they were with what they were playing. And I mean, and a lot of jazz guys always said, sing when you're playing the drums, because it'll come out more naturally. So you can hear some of their old stuff where they're humming or they're, because they're getting into it, and it's like that's cool. Nobody, I don't think people really appreciate that, um, especially in drums. I think it's just overlooked a lot of the times, because you want the flashy and the chops, and it's the age old battle.
That's the age-old battle of just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Hmm.
Um, so we're in a very interesting time in entertainment, and you had started Tunes for a Minute before, obviously, the pandemic, right? You've been doing this now for a while, and there was obviously a need in the local music scene that you were filling with Tunes for a Minute. How did Tunes for a Minute materialize, and what did that process look like for you?
So it started with an inspiration from Instagram. Um, as I like coming out of 7 years of playing music with my brother, I was jaded. I was kind of disappointed, disillusioned, and just kind of, we had hit a wall with how music was being done and even how we were doing it and contributing to things. Um, and then, so I kind of stepped away from music altogether, 2, 3 years. And then just one day, realized that I could never quit. Right. So um, I decided if I was gonna try to get back into that world, that I was gonna do it differently. So instead of wanting to start a band or go sit in with some guys for a few shows, and instead of that, I decided to just break the norm of what you're supposed to do with other musicians, and just hang out and not really, looking for anything else, and not really trying to, meet people to start bands or et cetera, et cetera. It was just really just about hanging out. And yeah, so the inspiration, all that being said, the inspiration and at that time was Instagram, because it was so, it was before the sponsored ads, it was before stories, it was before a bunch of, the stuff that we don't like now. But um, it was it was very it was just more organic. And so you can find a lot of stuff that would help you on your journey, guys teaching you how to do stuff, guys, explaining marketing and et cetera. And it felt like it was easy to find that on Instagram and so difficult to find that in your local scene. So the idea then was to just get together with other musicians, write a 1-minute tune, and then, that's that. Hang out for a little bit and chat them up, see what they're up to, see what projects they got coming up, and all that good stuff, right? But essentially, it was just introducing myself differently to other people. Right after that, I met Colin. He was like the 8th or 9th episode, and he said, Colin's my partner with Tunes for a Minute, but he said, "This is great. I want to be on all these." And so I told him, "Sweet, yeah, I need a bass player anyway." So we essentially became like a moving band, right? Just playing with different guys and writing a 1-minute tune, taking video, and we got the podcast going shortly after the 10th episode, and it was just a very good way to introduce ourselves to musicians. So we quickly realized that it was an even better way to introduce ourselves to venues. And when we started to take the mentality that we had as musicians, right, and sort of using that with venues, we realized that we can connect that bridge, right, the broken bridge between the venue and the artist. And it came easily because we knew what artists wanted, because we are artists. So it was like, well, if we can help them sort of introduce themselves better to a venue, then we can help everybody. Because it's the age old, well, how many people are you going to bring? Well, we're just a band and we want to play music, and and it felt like we can do it differently and help everybody. So that's kind of it went from a podcast for musicians to, hey, let's start doing a podcast with venues. And then we started to see problems, the problems on both sides that they were talking about, and we thought, okay, screw it, let's connect those dots.
So that's an important distinction, because both suffer from, traditionally anyway, understanding how internet marketing works, right? Understanding the difference between, I am providing entertainment for my guests versus getting entertainment brought by the artist that's performing. But then also, and again, just traditionally from what we see a lot, artists understanding how these contracts work and their responsibility in being the entertainment and what that looks like. So seeing that, what are you hoping to accomplish long term with Tunes for a Minute? And again, it's one of the reasons why I was excited to do this episode with you is I think a lot of other marketplaces can learn from what Tunes for a Minute is doing and what you guys are doing. And I think it's important that the community helps as much as they can to facilitate these types of conversations and identify these types of solutions. Where do you see Tunes for a Minute, a year or two from now?
I would say, short term would be, we want to be a place where musicians can go to, really get shows, right? That's like the first one, right? Because it's money, people need money. But then we also, the main goal, right? The big one would be the ultimate resource for musicians. So our tagline is content, community, opportunity. We want to be able to provide those three to every artist that we can, and that's willing to work with us. And we realized, that the fastest way there would be handling live shows. So being able to, it's more like almost like a subscription kind of thing, where it's like, hey, work with us, this is the contract, and we will have, 6 shows a month for you. Depending on where you live, it'll be this many bars, or it'll be whatever. So essentially it's like you plug in. So you're not just going and getting a show, you're going and now you're getting plugged into a whole network of venues and other artists right off the bat, right? So say you're just coming up, you don't know kind of what your scene looks like, where you should go to get a show, who do you talk to first, how do you present yourself, how much should you ask for, never undercut, blah blah blah. It's almost like just a resource and a network and a kind of like bam, you're there. You're now in school, you're in session with your first show. So that would be the way we'll do that. I see for the next like 2 years.
So you're I mean essentially a production company, right? If you think about all of those elements in a product, it's a production from the sense of, yeah, we're going to have minute bite-sized content of musicians, in which case then we could help them introduce them to venues, help curate these shows and these other experiences, and we can live stream that. Or right, I know that's also a part of your model and what you're moving into as well. And it's a one-stop shop, right? From how do you, because again, it's every artist and every venue needs more media
Mhm.
content, usually compelling content. It's
Yeah.
not just walking through with the camera and going, here's my venue.
Yeah.
But and musicians are certainly always looking for ways to get more content, and I don't know why venues don't offer that service more often than they do, especially just a handful of ones that do in Chicago. um, where do you see, speaking of venues and speaking of Chicago, on the other side of the pandemic, what are you hoping changes on the venue and musician relationship standpoint?
Specifically with that, I would say that they realize they need each other. You know what I mean? Like there's no way around it. Like venues are going to need bands, bands need venues. And you know, to be fair, I think musicians take advantage of that more than the venue. A lot of the times, musicians will act like, or even just now, the way a lot of people are just kind of like, hands in the air. What are we going to do? Can't really play shows. And it's if we take that approach to it, then yeah, your local venues might not open again. Um, so I kind of want, bands to realize that the more we do to help the musician or help the venue and promote the venue, the more it'll help us. And vice versa. The venue is always going to be worried about their bottom line, and they don't care about your art. They need it. They're just, they're trying to raise their hand in a busy market to get some attention as just as much as the next guy. So uh, they could also uh, learn from that, the fact that without a band that you treat so poorly, you
Mhm.
wouldn't have any entertainment at all. Like
Sure.
you know what I mean? Like, so it's tough. It's tough because that's the reality. But I'm hoping that, yeah, if there is a post Corona, then that relationship will begin to mend itself, whether we're involved or not. That everybody would realize if we did this together, we could do better.
And I agree with you 100% on that sentiment, that obviously one can't exist without the other. Well, technically artists could, versus venues,
True.
just because with all the technology now enabling us to do this as an example, and live stream shows and whatnot. But again, that's still being figured out, and it's not fully baked product yet. Um, we know that a lot of venues obviously are closing their doors because of, they can't keep up with what's going on. What would you recommend to venues, or how are you seeing, maybe you've seen some good examples of venues that are um, starting to change up their models a little bit, right, to kind of cope with what's happening around them right now? What does that look like, and what have you seen?
I mean, it's the obvious stuff, the live streaming, and figuring out how to make that more of an experience, and really just, um, upping the quality of those videos, those streams, is kind of where few venues have started to realize that. if everybody's going to be doing this, we got to make ours different and at least start with quality. Because most of these live streams you're seeing are, they're, like
You mean I can't just like use my iPhone and like live stream the band playing on Facebook?
actually our first live stream, the one we did with a venue here called Pollyanna. Well, it's a brewery, but they do have a pretty good stage too. But um, Pollyanna and St. Charles. First one we did was actually all with iPhones. We used switcher technology, um, but it worked itself out because it was 1080, and we could switch things up. But anyway, so it's you don't have to get insane. You don't have to go buying new cameras. There's definitely solutions out there that'll make it easy for you. But yeah, I think the one thing that venues I've seen kind of thinking ahead or okay, well, we need to get better internet in here and we need to invest in some cameras and some streaming software. And it's like, yeah, it sucks because you're not making a whole lot right now, but you do need to put down some money for that because it's right now anybody can compete. Subterranean, Beat Kitchen, Metro, all these venues in Chicago, they're the ones that are going to be held to a higher standard with this whole thing.
That's
And
true.
so
As
because
they should.
yeah, 100%. But they got to start doing something.
Yeah.
You can't just, geez, I don't know. And that's what it feels like. We tried to get some stuff going with a few venues here and there, and we get some bites, and sometimes it's just like, no, we're just going to keep the doors closed for now and see what happens. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, what are you going to do?
Well, yeah. Well, I can tell you what's going to happen, and
Yeah.
I don't know how much revenue you got saved up. So, um, switching gears a little bit, if you could go back and actually, you know what? No, not that. What were some big learning, some aha moments for you on developing Tunes for a Minute and from beginning to where you are now? That if somebody was an aspiring entrepreneur that wanted to help their community in a way meaningful and maybe in alignment with what you're doing for Tunes for a Minute, what were some of those big learning lessons for you that would help somebody like that along their way and journey?
Honestly, I think that the biggest one, number one, is when you step into that role of like I want to take this new idea somewhere. I want to turn this thought into material, and the biggest thing is always be on, always be selling. I guess you kind of have to live in that where it consumes you, and then your life just kind of everything around you starts becoming that. Um, but I guess practically, it would be relationships, and it would be the biggest things that we have done with Tunes for a Minute have started with what? A conversation every time, right? I mean, you don't get anything started out outside of that. So picking up the phone and calling, like making it a point when you meet somebody to be like, hey, even if you don't know what you're going to call them for, just say, expect a call from me at some point in the future. I'd love to talk to you about whatever. It doesn't matter because if there's something you do want to do, it'll come up. A lot of times there's things that we don't even know that are going on in the background where if you just spoke up, it would start, the ball would at least start to get rolling. So,
I
yeah.
like that. Coffees for closers, right? So who are the people on maybe the business side of things, like the people that inspire you, or are there books that you've read that have helped you? What resources would you recommend? Right. So it could be books, could be podcasts. What gets your business and creative juices flowing on that side?
I'm thinking podcasts, but it's it's actually a Spanish podcast that I was listening to. They had a few different stories of entrepreneurs, um, that was really encouraging. Um, but I guess, I mean, it's Radio Ambulante. I can't remember the name of the episodes, but anyway, there was one specifically. Dang it, I'm so bad with names. Um,
Oh, good.
there was one specifically that was, oh man, I could look it up, but that's cheating. Can I cheat?
No, you can cheat. It's you're not being graded, so
Yeah.
just being judged.
Oh, that's
Kidding.
awesome.
I'm just kidding. We're a
No.
very open-minded audience. What about any books in particular?
You know what, man? Not on the business side. I
Okay.
have quite frankly never read a book on business,
Well,
which is
and I mean, I guess you wouldn't really need to with your dad either. He's a he's a
yeah.
fountain of knowledge when it comes to the business side of things. So that,
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it comes from that for sure. And I do work with, I've been working with my dad in that world for goodness, almost 10 years now. Um, and so yeah, he's as you know, he's definitely the one that knows how to think about it.
yeah,
Um, but that podcast I was talking about was called Startup Podcast by Gimlet.
yeah.
Um, and that one was really, really encouraging and just like very, very insightful on the steps to take when you're starting a business and kind of it's this guy who just chronicles from day one when he decided that he was going to start a business. He starts recording himself and then he turns it into a full I mean, a podcast that turned
Into a
into a
business.
massive production company.
Yep.
It's crazy. So it's kind of like exactly what we were doing. We had started a podcast and then we realized about a year and a half into it that, well, if we want to do this right, we have to be a production company.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so yeah, that's where listening to that podcast was like, oh, this is cool. It's hard, but it's not unattainable.
What are you hoping when people think about tunes for a minute? What do you want them? What do you want to come to mind for them?
For the audience, I would say unique experiences, cool shows, just the for the audience, it would be all about the events that we put on, right? And just kind of letting them, those, the people with kids that they can't go to shows, they don't have time to go searching forums to find local bands to go listen to, but they know that they've got, they can go to Tunes for a Minute, an event, and it would be local, it would be real, it would be cool, it would, and just a unique experience. But even the guys that are plugged into the scene would still have a good time. So that for them, for the musician, I would hope, well, which that kind of, that sort of showed itself to us in the midst of all this, because we started getting, calls and texts from different musicians that we've worked with that were just very grateful for us helping. So whether it was we booked them a show, we found them a bass player, we subbed in for one of their gigs, we drove to the city to drop drums off for them, or because which we've done, and
Wow.
whatever it is, we do what we can, and I think it was coming back more and more where they were like, hey, just thanks for helping, thanks for helping us do what we love, and if that's what they remember us as, then perfect.
You had to drive to the city to drop drums off.
Yeah.
Um, I can't even imagine a scenario in which that
Oh,
would happen.
it wasn't an emergency thing. It was he asked me the night before, but it was a buddy of mine, Chris Sanchez. He had drums set up somewhere else for the studio, and he's like, dude, if I take this apart, like I didn't even put it two and two together, but if I take this apart now, the session tomorrow is going to take twice as long for no reason. I'm like, it's fine. What time do we need to meet up? And blah blah blah. And
Wow.
yeah, I drove
That
down.
is impressive. Not only like, yeah, okay, that makes more sense. I thought, I
Yeah,
was
no,
thinking that the drummer showed up without his drums, and
I got my sticks, but I forgot my.
hate it when that happens. God.
But shout out to Colin, because Colin Ryan, my partner, dude, he's done that more times than I have. And he
That's
said it
awesome.
once. He said it once. He goes, I don't know when we did it, man, but we signed ourselves up to inconvenience our schedules, to help other people. And it's kind of funny, and it sounds like we're pretentious and assholes, but it's not the truth. But it is really what you're signing up for. You realize how much of a headache it is to book
Yeah,
shows.
well, it's true leadership is serving people, and it's with a kind of a servant mindset, and I think most people forget that how to lead from the back, and they always want to lead from the front, but true leaders lead from the back. Um,
Yeah, that's
and
good.
Simon Sinek's got a lot of really good reading stuff on that. I'm gonna have to recommend a ton of good
Absolutely.
fucking books for you because you just
Which is funny. I'm a reader. I love reading. I just never even thought of a business book. That's so funny.
Yeah, well, business books I think can be overrated at sometimes, but there's a lot in like philosophy and psychology that I really enjoy, and stuff like that that has certainly helped me think about things differently. And again, I'm sure brother obviously reads a lot on the philosophy side, I would imagine. But anyway, so we're coming up on time. Got a couple more questions for you.
Mm,
This is one of my favorite. If you had a superhero power, what would that superhero power be?
control metal.
What?
Magneto, 100%. I would control metal, all types, all of it.
You've thought about this.
100%. Absolutely.
So why Magneto?
So you can, I mean, you can control everything around you almost all the time. Almost all the time.
Yeah,
And
like in the movie with Apocalypse, right? And he like realizes that there's a lot of metal on the ground and
oh, it's great.
just starts moving the earth.
You can move the earth if you want, but also you can fly. I mean,
Yeah, you can.
he can fly wherever he wants because he can just make the metal move that he's wearing. Like, come on, man. Superman's overrated because, oh my God, so what? You can do everything and you don't die. Well, whatever.
Well, who wants to wear that suit?
It's stupid. Stupid. Honestly, I'd rather be Homelander, if I'm being honest with you.
So how do people get a hold of you? How do people get involved?
Tunes for a minute and everywhere: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. Which we are putting a bunch of stuff together to kind of ramp up the YouTube. That's definitely not looking great. So, um, and then me personally, just Jay Plays Drums on Instagram. That's really all. I mean, I'm on Facebook, but man, I never get on there. I'm on Twitter. Jay Plays Drums, same thing. Um, Jay, I guess it's Jay space plays space drums.
Space or
Well, on Instagram, if you hit a
like
space, it's just going to put an underscore anyway.
yeah, it's gonna right.
Yeah. So it's underscore,
That
yeah,
just sounds a lot longer when you say it though. J underscore plays underscore.
J underscore plays. Why did I do this? Drums. Some people have been calling me JPD, which is kind of funny. So I might just change.
It's almost your initials.
Almost, yeah. One off, but it's fine.
J drums play? No, it doesn't work.
No,
Uh,
no. Well, yeah, whatever. JCP.
JCP.
JCP. Um, yeah, no, we're definitely most active on Instagram. So yeah, if you want anything and you're in the Chicago area, you want to hang out, hit us up anytime.
Fantastic. Awesome. Well, hey man, really appreciate the time today. Thank you for everybody for tuning in with Jason Perez, co-founder and CEO of Tunes for a Minute. Thank you to our partners in Sperry for allowing these interviews to happen. And if you know anybody in the MediaTech community that's doing incredible work and they're incredible badasses, let us know. We're always interested to interview exciting people doing exciting things. Thank you all for tuning into another episode of Community Spotlight, and we'll see you all next week. Cheers.